to the 6th edition of Afkar-e-Taza Think Fest. I would request you all to please stand up for the national anthem. Before our first session starts, I would like to share a bit about Afkar-e-Taza Think Fest. The Afkar-e-Taza Think Fest is inspired by the thought of Pakistan's poet laureate, Sir Allama Muhammad Iqbal, where he asserted in his poem Takhleeq, Creation, that new worlds derive their pomp from thoughts quite fresh and new. From stones and bricks, a world has neither built nor grew. In order to create these newer worlds, the ThinkFest aims to achieve 3 objectives. First is the creation of newer spaces, realms, and opportunities for the flourishing of new thoughts and ideas, so that Pakistan can develop as a forward-looking and progressive country. Secondly, the Afkar-e-Taza Think Fest aims to bridge the gap between academia and society by becoming an interface between them. Worldwide, newer and creative thoughts are incubated in universities and colleges. But in Pakistan, there is little interaction between academia and the general public. This event bridges the gap by providing academic discourse in an accessible yet robust manner for fuller understanding and engagement. And thirdly, since recently Pakistan and the world have been marred in the vortex of fake news and alternative facts which blur and mask our knowledge and judgments on critical issues. The Afkar-e-Taza Think Fest provides us with an opportunity to engage with leading scholars from around the world in a fact-based and critical discussion which is grounded and vigorous. Now, I would like to call on stage Dr. Yaqub Bangash to please continue.
Thank you very much, and welcome all of you here. We're a bit sort of our first edition after the pandemic, so kind of scarily we kind of did this, but just to ensure that at least things do get off a good start. So I hope you've looked at the program. We have people from all over the world that have come to this, and as usual, I do want to highlight that we like for all our speakers to mingle with whoever has turned up here. So therefore, there'll be stalls outside for you to eat, but then to sit, to mingle, because a lot of the times the conversations are a lot more important that happen outside the hall than inside the hall. Inside the hall, you can hear things on YouTube afterwards, but the outside conversations that you will have with the speakers, with each other, are the most critical elements. And as Carol earlier said, we do want to focus on critical thought and action. And that is something that I would really like you to think of, especially considering that Pakistan is in such peculiar state at this time, if I might use a slightly less sad term. This is a great time for introspection. This is a great time to really think what has gone wrong, especially since a lot of countries that were around us have moved on. And I should take an example here. I was recently talking to someone from Bangladesh, from their foreign ministry. And, the person privately said to me at a dinner and said, it's good that we separated. We don't want to talk about what happened at that time. We've moved on. And they've moved on. Has Pakistan moved on in a number of things? These are questions that we must ask. And maybe that's the reason why we are here, and that is the reason why conditions are such in Pakistan. Of course, I could go on and on and on here, but there are so many of these questions that I think over the next 2 days, with the over 40 panels we have, we think about and question, as our motto kind of says, come, think, question. Questioning and knowing the truth, veritas, that's a very important element of what we do here. So I hope you will participate in it. Also, my job as an organizer is at the opening to give some quick thank yous to everyone, because of course this would not happen if a lot of people did not put in time and effort and energy, and especially money here, because with the falling rupee, everything is twice what it was, and I've come back to kind of things costing 80 to 90% more. So I really want to thank all our sponsors here, because I think without them this would not happen, and also for our recurring sponsors who have always helped us throughout this. First, of course, Alhambra. They have been our collaborator from day one, and they've been very nice and cooperative and kind. I also want to thank the EU Embassy. That's always been our major sponsor and really helped us. The French and the German embassies are also our sponsors and have cooperated with us bringing people in here. We also have the Fulbright Commission of Pakistan, and Rita is here, who chairs the Fulbright Commission. She's always a dear friend and always a supporter of such activities. Remit and UK Aid also participated this year. And then our three kind of big sponsors without which, I could not even conceive this. One is, of course, Syed Engineers, the great piano pen that we all use and love, and its owner, Savail Hussain, who's also a trustee of ThinkFest. Also, Destinations and Devu, and Asma Chishti, who is really the force behind a lot of things that happen here, also a trustee of ThinkFest. And also Ismail Industries and Candyland, where Dr. Miftah Ismail, who's also one of the trustees of ThinkFest, leads. So without these three big ones, we would not be able to bring this all the time. We also have a number of academic collaborators that we really want to acknowledge and thank. PILDAT has always been really helpful and has put up superb panels every year for this. We also partner with several publishers, Folio Press, Lighthouse, OUP, and others to bring their books here. As you would see, there are about 17, 18 book launches that we are having during this time, and that shows there's a lot of academic interest in Pakistan, but that academic interest needs engagement, and this is something which is really, really important. We need to move beyond just a TV show, country, and engage with deeper thought on things. And our university academic partner, University of Central Punjab, I really do want to thank them, and especially Khadija Amir, for all her work in coordinating things here. I also want to thank my team. This began at my university, ITU, a few years ago, and now it's kind of taken its own life. So my team there, they're doing several different things now, but they've all come together for this. Ibrahim Murad is doing a PhD at Oxford, but he's flew in for this. Hafizur Rahman is now a civil servant. He's coming from Islamabad for this. Hussain Anwar, he is working with the Punjab government, and he's taken time out and do this. Kamran also is another chap who has done so many other works and does all the logistics. So even though we are no longer at that, well, all of them, I'm still technically there, at the university, they come back and sort of help us in this regard. So thank you all, and thank you for the rest of the team, all the volunteers and everyone that have taken part here. Before I leave, I just want to introduce to you our to make some remarks, the EU ambassador. We are really grateful that Her Excellency Dr. Rina Kyonka has graced us with her presence today. She's only been here 6 months, so we are really happy that she has taken time out here. And she'll say a few words before we move on to the first session. Ambassador Kyonka has served as the EU ambassador to South Africa from 2019 to 22, and previously she was the chief foreign policy advisor to the President of the European Council. She hails from Estonia, and before working for the EU, she was in the Estonian Foreign Ministry. So, Ambassador, we are very happy that you are here. We are very thankful for your continued support. And I should say I'm also thankful to Daniel for his support, because without him, we would not have initiated all these collaborations with the EU. But Ambassador, may I request you to please come and say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yaqub, and good morning. Salam alaikum. It's a great honor to be here after being here only for 6 months in Pakistan, because I've been hearing about ThinkFest, and I've been wanting to take part in this, and so it's a real privilege to be able to do that for the first time. Coming from Europe, we have regional integration in our DNA, really. This idea that that countries, by working together, can solve some common problems more effectively. And more peacefully, in fact, than they can doing it separately. And this is in stark contrast, in fact, to what we see in South Asia, the least integrated region of the world. And Dr. Yaqub referred to the fact that some countries in South Asia have moved on, and others can learn from those who have moved on, let's put it that way. Events like ThinkFest make a small but, I believe, very important contribution to the idea of bringing regional integration and the way of resolving past conflicts into the present day. Like in past editions, this edition of ThinkFest has a horizon that spans the subcontinent and allows to discuss history, discuss shared questions in the present, and maybe open up some avenues for the joint future. And I've heard, in fact, that online sessions and recordings of ThinkFest in the past were followed all across the South Asian subcontinent and were commented on by people as far afield as Bangladesh as well as India. And so that speaks to the spanning, the focus of this conference. But as accustomed as we all have become to virtual space, it's really great to be here in person at the first post-COVID conference, because in fact, as Dr. Yaqub said, the importance is to talk face to face, but to take those debates from the podium out into the lobby, out into the courtyard, and inevitably to take them home with us, to take these ideas home with us back to our own communities and spread those ideas further and let them foment, let them evolve. And that's the whole point. So I will not talk anymore. I just wanted to say good morning and how proud we are to continue supporting ThinkFest. I'm excited, as you are, for the debates to begin. And so a great big thanks to Dr. Yaqub and his team and everybody who made this edition of ThinkFest possible. It's not an easy time in Pakistan, for sure. The country is facing multiple crises. But in a time like this, an event like this that allows us to stop for a moment, to think, to reflect, and to think of ideas forward is more important than ever. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for those words. And yes, that's our grand hope that, we take these ideas forward because, as our motto says that, this is how the Afkar Taza, the newer thoughts, that's how things will change. So unless they germinate and lead to newer worlds, nothing will happen. But without much ado, let me just introduce to you the plenary panel here. The good thing about the main speaker of the plenary panel is that you actually do not need to introduce him because everyone knows him. So, Mohsin Hamid, please do come up. And Mohsin is going to be in conversation with our very own Dr. Waseem Anwar, who has been a colleague of mine at Foreman Christian College, but is now at Kinnaird College. And they shall have a conversation on challenging truths. Mics?
Hello. Okay, Assalamu alaikum, good morning, and all the best wishes, and welcome actually to all the truth seekers, who could make it on this freezing day today. Challenging truths, and I think that's the topic. So there are different ways of looking at it, and I think one of the truths that Lahore is about is love, and love of all kinds. So Lahore in itself is love, and I think we all wait for more love in this freezing, sneezing, cold weather, and Mohsin, I hope you agree with that. So maybe more coming from you on those themes. Particularly when we don't have even power, logistic or political. So there is a lot that we await. I would like to begin with, before we have some formal questions to wrap a record, and maybe you would like to say yes or no, but just correct me if I'm wrong, that you were born in 1971, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That you have British and Pakistani nationalities, both of them, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. That you are a literary fiction writer. Okay.
Yeah.
That you were at Princeton in 1993 and your senior thesis was there, Sustainable Power, Integrated Resource Planning in Pakistan.
That's true, yes.
Okay. You were in Harvard in 1997 and you worked on corporate law.
I took one course in corporate law, but yeah.
Okay,
I was-
okay. That you studied under Joyce Carol Oates and Toni Morrison and did some workshops there? That brought you to creative writing?
Yeah, at Princeton, not at Harvard, yeah.
Great. Okay, that you were in London as well in 2001 with Wolf Ollins advertising to be declared, and this is you need to explain to me. First ever Chief Storyteller Officer. What is that? And this is in 2015, right?
You want me to answer that now?
Yeah, please, please, please.
So, when I finished law school, I needed a job. So I got a job as a consultant in New York for a few years, and I worked on my first novel, Moth Smoke, which came out in 2000, and then started my second novel and moved to London, left my job at McKinsey, was in Lahore trying to write this book, running out of savings, and I got approached by this firm, Wolf Ollins, which is a branding firm, to come to London and work for them. And I didn't really want a job, but I needed to do something because it was taking forever to write this book. And a friend of mine said, look, just go to London and ask for what you would need to make you say yes. So I went to London and I said, look, I can only work 3 days a week and these are my requirements. And they said, fine. So I began consulting with them, and then I started doing 2 days a week, and then 1 day a week, and then no days a week, and came back to Lahore. And while living in Lahore, a friend of mine who I had hired when I was running the London office of Wolf Ollins became the CEO of Wolf Ollins and said, look, we should work together. And we met in Dubai, actually. I was there for something, and he was there for something. And we got chatting, and over a sort of fun dinner, we came up with this idea that, we would call my role Chief Storytelling Officer.
That's great. We all can have more of them.
So that was the background.
Thank you. Okay, what I learned more about you, and I'm using your vocabulary actually, from discontent, and what is that? Discontent and its civilizations, and maybe you have quoted them there. And I don't know if you are that, but mongrel,
Yes.
miscegenator,
I suppose, yeah.
half-breed, outcast, deviant, heretic, hybrid, half-outsider, mingler, mixer, divided, discontented. Is that something you would like to explain on?
Yeah, I think that there's some people who I suppose are very fortunate in feeling that they are completely from one place and they fit into that place, or at least they think that. Others of us have a very difficult time doing that. In my case, when I was 3, we moved to California. My father is a university professor. He was then, he still is a university professor in Lahore now. So 1974, moved to Stanford to do his PhD. I went to California. I spoke Urdu and Punjabi. When I got there, I quickly forgot my Urdu and Punjabi. I learned English, moved back to Pakistan in 1980. At that point, I didn't speak a word of Urdu and Punjabi, and so I tried to relearn my first languages. But I was pretty much a Californian boy. So I'd been a Pakistani boy, completely shocked in California. Then I was a Pakistani boy, again shocked in 1980s Pakistan. Then I went back to America, came back to Pakistan. And so as a result, I'm a kind of mixed up sort of creature. and not entirely of any one place or disposition.
Okay. Thank you.
And I think for much of my life, I thought, let me find a way to hide this and sort of pretend that I fit in with everybody else, whether I'm in London or New York or Lahore. But at a certain point, I realized, look, maybe instead of trying to pretend that I'm like everybody else, I should consider that everybody else is like me, which is to say that everybody is a kind of misfit. And so if you're the only girl with 4 brothers, you're a misfit. If you are, a poet in a family of engineers, you're a misfit. If you are somebody who reads novels on planet Earth in the 21st century, you're, a misfit. So, so I began to realize that actually, instead of feeling separated from other people by this sense of being kind of hybridized, mongrel, strange creature, I should be open to the idea that everybody else maybe feels a bit strange too, and that this is in fact a kind of connection instead of a separation.
Thank you for putting so many in yourself, and that's great. And yet you are actually, in 2013, the 100 leading global thinker, and I think he deserves an applaud on that. So. You are a writer, of course, but you are an author first. And I'll go into details about authorship later on, which is how authorial you are. But let me pick on other things. Discontent and its civilizations. And we can see, okay, I'm not going to put civilization in a bracket anywhere, but what comes to my mind is Sigmund Freud. So is it an inversion of Sigmund Freud, or how do you look at it? Can you explain a bit on this?
So the title of this book is that it is a inversion of civilization and its discontents, the seminal book by Freud. But the book basically takes the position that it is in fact our discontents, the things that annoy us, anger us, make us feel the world is unfair, that causes us to very often gravitate to structures that we say that, look, we belong to a particular group of people. We belong to Punjabis, or we belong to Pakistanis, or we belong to Muslims, or we belong to whatever's, PTI, PMLN, and that in some ways it's not that our tribes give rise to our conflicts, but that it's our conflicts that give rise to our tribes.
Okay, thanks. And this is psychological as well, along with sociological, when we talk about discontent?
I think everything is psychological along with sociological. Yeah.
Okay, author, as far as I know, and you are writing in English by choice, right?
By necessity.
While you are a Punjabi?
By necessity.
By necessity, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting question because the language question is very important, I think.
Yes.
So it would be one thing if I were equally fluent in English and Urdu and I chose to write in English. But I'm not equally fluent in Urdu and English. I was much more fluent in Urdu than English
and
until I was
in English
3.
As well?
I think mostly in English, but I think also what happens is that for many people, language is something that occurs over the journey of your life. And in my case, the way that my journey has happened, although Urdu was my first language, I forgot it. And then English became my second language, but I didn't have a first language. And then I relearned Urdu when I was 9 or 10, and so it became my third language. I don't really have a first language because my mother tongue is forgotten. And so in terms of writing, if I were to attempt to write a book in Urdu, it would be so horrifically, bad that it doesn't bear thinking about.
Yeah.
But also I think it's important because we often imagine that there's a great politics attached to the language in which we choose to speak.
There is, of course.
And there is a politics, but sometimes the politics is not what we think. So in my case, it's like if you grew up in Pakistan and you could have been a fantastic sitar player, but you just happened to learn the guitar and you became reasonably good at it. At that point to say that, you should be playing the sitar because that's the instrument of your homeland is an impossibility. So for me, it's not that I prefer to write in English, or I think that, English opens up the world, or that it actually comes to the fact that the instrument that I learned to play much better happened to be English.
Thank you. And I ask this question particularly because I think many of my students who are English literature major are creative writers and would like to actually write in English. So things get open for them. Thank you so much.
It's also interesting because, what I find is that in Pakistan today, when you speak at university campuses, it's interesting how many of these young people do read in English.
They do.
And whether you're talking to somebody who's a student in Islamabad or Peshawar or Karachi or Lahore, on our university campuses today, many, many young people are reading in English.
Yeah.
And so there is an English language literary tradition
Yes.
that exists in Pakistan, which is not some external thing.
Right.
And in fact, it's partly because I think that young people realize when they're 18 years old, because English is usually the third language. They had some language they learned at home.
Right.
And then at some point they got taught Urdu in school. And then they go to college and discover that actually they need to have English. And English is this language of power. The Constitution is in English. If you want a job abroad, you need to know English. And so people understand that there's something there. But I've never really had the feeling that English was not a Pakistani language. I mean,
Thank you for saying
that's
that.
a
And I think,
convenient
yeah.
thing for me to say, but I actually, I remember speaking to this young woman who came to this Lahore Lit Fest many years ago, and she was a professor at Edwards College in Peshawar, and she would teach the Latin Fundamentalist to 500 young students with photocopied editions, and she would talk about the conversation that they would have. And I remember thinking that, we often get very caught up in this notion that, there's a kind of foreign plot or some sort of in service of foreign interests. There's something fundamentally disloyal about the idea of writing in English. Why is this happening?
I keep telling my students that yes, sometimes we do breathe in English as well. I think we own English now, and we got to own it. So I'm not a propagandist for that, but yeah, I think that's a reality.
And the last thing I would say about this is that it is also a mistake to imagine that English only comes to Pakistan from outside. It is also the case that English is made in Pakistan
Also.
and goes into the world.
Right.
So we do have a degree of ownership
Yes.
over this language. It's something that we too own. And Pakistan has a huge number of English-speaking people, one of the largest in the world.
Yes. That an author is a person who invents and also causes something, which I believe is known to be authentic. I don't know whether it is or not, but that there is always, what author does is he or she increases, originates, promotes. And that happens with all the authors, so you are no different. But let's, I think, go back to the title once again, Challenging Truths. And I was looking at it from an adjectival perspective with its verbal connotations. And I think it's on the back flap of your latest novel, The Last White Man by Tayari Jones, right? That you are challenging truths, that you have challenging truths around you, and that you very much contest for it. Is that true? I mean, so what sort of truths those are that you find challenging and you pick on as your themes?
I mean, one thing I think for me, in some ways I feel very fortunate to have moved back to Pakistan in the 1980s, under the Wahjoc dictatorship. Because it, in a way, for many of us, I think at that time, it inoculated us against a certain... We talk often about how under General Zia, society was changed in many ways that many of us think of as fairly horrific. But there are also, there's also the effect of that when you live in a state with such deep hypocrisy and such, in a sense, a kind of a state-sponsored narrative so at odds with what your eyes and ears are telling you,
even the history,
you begin, in a way, to develop a degree of skepticism. I think actually that's very useful. I remember being in India maybe 15 years ago for some literary festival or book launch or whatever, back when it was possible to go. I haven't been to India in many years. It's impossible to get visas to go anymore. But back then, I remember talking to journalists there and saying, you know, it's interesting because you seem to have, so many of you seem to have bought into this jingoistic idea that, you know, India is this and India is that, and we have been wronged and this, which reminds me so much of America. In America, in the post 9/11 moment, you saw, you know, completely, you know, false accounts of what was happening and this very nationalistic sort of turn. And I thought, you know, to me it's very interesting how so few of my friends who are journalists in Pakistan, or you know, intellectuals or writers or whatever, think in this way. That there's a great degree of skepticism about these sorts of narratives. And so you asked a question about challenging truths.
right?
I think that, you know, when a country or society tells you that this is the truth, and insists upon saying that this is the truth, in a sense, one is left with no other alternative but to challenge the truth. You know, it's like when we were told that, you know, the air quality is fine. It's the air quality monitors, you know, that are lying to us. A few years ago, if you remember in Lahore, this was being said. It's a perfect example of this. We could all tell, you know, our asthmatic friends were in hospital, our children were coughing when they would go out to do their sports. We could barely breathe. Our sinuses were clogged up. But yet we were told
Mohsin,
that...
in today's world, alternative truths are equally dangerous, aren't they?
Well, what I wanted to say was that truth is something that needs to be contested. And so in Pakistan, I think that we, in a sense, have to contest truth because it's at this point, you know, false truth has been shoved down our throats for so long that it becomes almost a gag reflex to challenge it. But as you say, you know, alternate truths, I think is that what you said?
Yes. Or alt-truth, which is a very popular term. Yeah.
So I think, you know, I remember the first time I saw that interview with President Trump's spokesperson. I think her name was Kellyanne Conway. And some journalist was saying, you know, you were saying that was the biggest attendance at any, you know, presidential thing in history, but we saw photographs, the thing is half empty. How can you say it was bigger than Obama's inauguration, etc.? You know, and she said, you know, the facts are the facts. And she said, well, you have your facts, but we have alternative facts. And I hadn't heard that expressed. It was one of these times when, you know, from a very strange source, you hear this kind of words of evil wisdom or whatever you want to call it.
So where lies the truth? In fiction or in fact?
But just to conclude this point, it reminded me of when, you know, Donald Rumsfeld talked about the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns. And, you know, this guy had presided over this disastrous invasion, but in that idea of the unknown unknowns was actually a very interesting concept. Anyway, so I remember thinking about this alternate facts thing. And I think what has happened is that facts have been debased on all sides. That facts have also been debased, for example, by experts. So we are told that, you know, the economy is doing fantastically, let's say.
Right.
And yet most people see their lives are getting worse. Or we are told that, you know, this
Somebody
is
would say
improving.
it's not cold.
Yeah. Or I mean, you know, in area after area, we are told things by experts that seem to be untrue. And so there's a reaction to that. So anyway, I think, I won't go on this, but I think that you know, alternate facts that are simply false are obviously not true. But we live in a moment where, due to technological change, the way at which we arrive at what truth is being changed. Experts are being challenged, and so there's a real flux about what is actually true and what is actually fact.
Coming back to your authorship and going back a bit in time, I would like to see how you evolve as an author. Are you authorial? I mean, are you authority driven when you create? Do you let your characters breathe on their own, or do you just make them the way you want them to be or behave. So what do you do with your characters? What sort of novels do you write?
So I often
Okay.
I often describe the writing process. Often young writers will come and say, okay, so how do you make this stuff, or what do you write?
Yeah, but if you can be specific about, how authorial you are, how authority-driven you are, omnipotent, potent, what is your narrative, and how free you leave your characters to behave and
Okay,
do
I'm going to try to
do.
answer this specifically, but it's a little bit difficult for me to do because I don't think in those terms.
Okay, I'm a critic. Sorry.
So, and I think this is one of those examples, right, where in a sense where there may be discourse about writing and ideas of what is authority and how authorial are you. Whereas I never think about that. It's like, when somebody says, not to equate myself to, Federer or to one of these great sports people, but an artist and in a sense, a tennis player might be similar. What is Federer thinking when he does that, beautiful backhand? The truth is he's not thinking anything.
Right.
He's just sort of in the moment, smiling at the ball and sending it across. So
Let me ask.
But I want to, one second.
Go ahead.
I want to just now. I think what you're asking in this question is how do I think of my own relationship with regards to the characters in my books, and to what extent do I think it is me or opposed to them?
Exactly.
So if that's what you mean by authorial,
Call it presence in absentia.
I don't believe that the characters in my books have an independent existence in that sense.
Okay.
And the reason why is that I don't think that when I write a character, there's a separate person out there that I have made. And the reason for that is when I write a character, what I am doing is imagining being them. So it is less to me like taking a photograph of somebody sitting in the audience. And it is more like being an actor trying to play this person. So when I am writing a character, man, woman, young, old, what I am doing is in a sense trying to be this person.
Okay.
And in the act of trying to be this person, in a sense, if you're the actor playing this character, but also the playwright who's writing the play, it's a bit mixed up. So the character is not some separate thing. That is, let them breathe and follow their course. Let the chips fall where they may. But rather it is, in a sense, like my son pretends to be a dinosaur on a regular basis. And he walks around the house, roaring, and he comes into the study and he, and terrifies me by roaring next to my ear. He's 10 and does less now, but when he was 9, he did this a lot.
He should do more.
In this, who is he? Is he himself? Is he the character? I think what fiction is about is blurring that boundary. When you make fiction, you are pretending to be other people. When you read fiction, you are allowing other people to exist inside you. You are animating them in your imagination. So this question of authority, it suggests a separation of two things: the writing and the writer, as two separate things, one of whom has authorship over the other. What I think is more interesting is the blurring of these two things. And if you put it in more of a, let's say, a context, given that some of the ancient writers we have here from Data Sahib al-Hajberi on, in our tradition, in the Sufi poetic tradition in particular, that tradition is fundamentally about blurring. That the lover and the beloved are, in a sense, poised to merge.
Sure.
Now, that is very much, I think, how I think about writing as well. So it's difficult for me to tell you, do I have authority or do I have whatever? Does the moth have authority over the candle flame? Who knows?
Thank you.
Yeah.
No worries. so there is still going on that mingling and mixing, which is part of you. So of course, that comes into your authorship as well. Going back in time, Moth Smoke and Reluctant Fundamentalist, I think you, in one of the interviews, did say, okay, you want your readers to read twice your work, particularly Reluctant Fundamentalist. So are there gaps? Loss of values, definitely. But then are you rejecting all these Huxleys, Orwells, Fitzgeralds? And then you are trying to actually build a new world, which I looked at in these two particular works, like, is it Angry Young Man? Is there a reaction to the conditions? How do you look at them, I mean, as a reaction to what is happening?
How do Moth Smoke and...
Yeah, in these two novels. Like one is a nuclear Pakistan, post-nuclear Pakistan situation. The other one is 9/11. And in both these novels, I mean, the protagonist is like either angry or made angry, something. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, so Moth Smoke for me, certainly the protagonist is angry, and I suppose I was angry. I think I still am angry. It's sort of difficult to be from Pakistan, to look around you at the enormous talent, history, culture all around you, and not be angry at what is going on, right? Like, why is it like this? Yeah. It could be so much better. And in a sense, that sense of anger at the disparity between what is possible and what is there. And in Moth Smoke, that anger expresses itself, in the form of this character. But Moth Smoke is also, of course, a love story, because Moth Smoke was a love story to Lahore, to a particular mode of being.
I think so was the Reluctant Fundamentalist as well.
That was also a love story. And in a sense, Moth Smoke, the title is the suggestion. For me, Moth Smoke really did flow on from a Sufi poetic tradition that I took very seriously. Okay. And how and why. One of the things that's quite interesting about our poetic tradition is some of its formal aspects. That very often we see a direct address to the you. That there isn't something happening out there. That you are implicated. That we are speaking to the beloved directly. The beloved is the you. And this you could also be the listener of the song, the reader of the poem, the beloved themselves. And so this idea of blurring the boundary between writer and reader was very interesting to me. And so I wanted to, in a way, write a kind of postmodern, slightly disenchanted take on this kind of a love.
Yeah, while you blur, which is of course very good to do, but then you also blur borders. I mean, if we move to, say, Filthy Rich and then onwards, there is a lot of anonymity in your works. You don't want to identify people. That's my take on it. Is this part of some haunting effect, or what is it that you want to not reveal? Can you just tell me?
Yeah, so the journey towards writing books that don't identify a place and don't have too many characters named and, in a sense, are despecified in some ways,
right,
is a journey that I can sort of talk about in terms of how I got there as a writer. So I wrote this book, Moth Smoke, and it was, a novel about lots of things: young people, hash, love,
and particularly Chinggis Khan and Dara Shikoh.
And a historical tradition, which in a sense reimagined the contest between Dada and Aurangzeb in a reversed modern context. But so I wrote this book, and it was sort of, in a way, inspired by Lahore, inspired by Pulp Fiction. It was kind of a hodgepodge of the different aspects of things that made me me. In a way, it was looking at Lahore through my eyes, which were, partly Americanized eyes. And then I wrote a novel called The Reluctant Fundamentalist, which was looking at America, really after this 9/11 moment, with eyes that were still quite Pakistanized. They were both, in a sense, hybrid novels, and the gaze was slightly different in each. Now, after this, in a sense, I remember there was this sort of critique that I began to hear, which is, you've set yourself up as a representative of Pakistan. Who are you to represent Pakistan? This is. I remember thinking about this. You're even maligning Pakistan. You're saying we're all terrorists. I think the book actually was the opposite of that. It doesn't say that we're all terrorists. It actually asks the question of how do we become suspicious of each other in the first place.
And you got all kinds of readership. I can understand that.
But what I want to say about this is that on the one hand, I thought this critique was ridiculous. On the other hand, I thought I have to take this seriously. There was this notion that you sort of take Pakistan's cultural patrimony. You're like a strip mining corporation. You dig up the bauxite and the iron ore and you send it to abroad and you leave a wasteland. And I thought this is ridiculous. But on the other hand, I thought, it is true that the center of economic gravity of publishing is outside of Pakistan. And while I may not think it's my intention, how do I know that I'm not engaged in some kind of cultural strip mining of Pakistan for globalized export? It's not something that could be dismissed so easily. So what I did in my third novel was I tried to set myself the task of interrogating what I do. And I said, I will write a novel that doesn't use the word Pakistan, doesn't use the word Islam, doesn't in any way talk about a specific place, but will still use Lahore as a template for the universal city. And I found that, although my initial impulse was to somehow interrogate whether I was self-exoticizing this place and somehow engaged in doing the very thing that some people thought I was doing, out of it what I found was something quite beautiful to me, which was maybe Lahore is the universal city. Maybe actually if you take Lahore as your starting plate and you write about an unnamed city, every city in the world will be echoed in what Lahore contains. In other words, every city could be the universal city. So as I began to move down this path, in a way, I guess I wound up writing these novels that were somewhat despecified. Initially, so that I could make sure to myself that I wasn't exoticizing for foreign consumption Pakistan, but stumbling into a sort of formal way of working, which was to say, maybe there are universal things that we ascribe to, you can say New York is a universal city, or you can say that London is a universal city, but they're not.
Yeah, in this third novel that you are referring to, and of course, richness is filthy, and Asia is rising, and amid all economic crisis and struggle, we see a lot of ambition, along with love, but don't you think there is a lot of greed as well, selfishness? So is that like both of these things present?
Yeah, so, and I'm seeing that we have only 2 minutes left, so I'll try to wrap up. But so in How to Get Filthy Rich and Rising,
I was told we have like 20 minutes still. Can you check on that, please? Yeah.
Oh, okay. So in How to Get Filthy Rich in Rising Asia, I moved back to Lahore in 2009, and what I was really struck by after being away for a while was how money had become even more central to life in Lahore and in Pakistan than it had been before. That 15 minutes.
Yes.
Okay. And in how, in a sense, much as we talked about other religious matters, that money had really become, in a sense, our national religion. That that older systems of class and even clan were being supplanted by a very precarious economic existence and then an incredibly stratified economic structure.
Right.
And so, in a sense, the pressure and the desire to show success in terms of money and to suffer enormous consequences of a lack of money became at the heart of what I wanted to explore. So, in a sense, the idea of a novel about how to get filthy rich in rising Asia, it was, I guess, a questioning of a kind of religion of money.
Okay. Thank you. We can go on and on, but I think I'm coming to your next one, 2017, Exit West. Why Exit West? I mean, a lot of exit is happening from east to west. So why Exit West, except I heard Brexit? So what is the take here?
Why is the novel called this?
Exit West. I mean, exit is happening east to west. You can see a lot of talent going from east to west. So why this title, Exit West?
So I think for me, the title means potentially many different things. So the way you've just described it is that people are exiting the West, I suppose. People are going from east to west, I think you said. So that means, yes, people are exiting the West. You can also, for example, on a stage, in theater, exit stage right, exit stage left. When you say exit west, it means you're exiting to the west.
To the west.
So you have both of those things. But the third part of it for me, which is quite interesting, is that when people like us who come from the east go and settle in the west, is the west still the west anymore? Was it ever the west, in fact? And is this idea of the west something itself that is starting to disappear? And so the novel sort of looks at that as well, is that if the West is the idea of being this separate place, is that separateness continue to exist in a world of migration? Or even beyond that, if the West is associated with certain values, inclusiveness, equality, this, that, the other, are those values really being upheld? And so Exit West was a play on all of these things, migrating in two different directions, and the idea of whether this thing that we call the West is still the West or not.
I'm skipping quickly to your 2022, The Last White Man.
Okay.
And I think, I hope it's not an attempt like wiping the white off the map, or is it like no white, or white being brown and then brown and brown all the time? Because I think, this is what I see, and I have some statistics actually. I'll talk later, but can you comment on Last White Man?
You want me to talk about the title?
Yeah, the title. It's like, okay, yeah, there we go. Like,
there we go what?
Like all brown.
Huh?
All brown. Like in the end, it's all brown, so why this, like, okay, Last White Man? Is it like post-colonial? Is it, I'm curious to know.
So, I think that it's probably worth just pausing for a second. The reason that one writes novels, things that are 100, 200 or 300 pages long, is that some things are better expressed at length and not reduced to sort of very small, glib kind of statements. I think we live in a world where we imagine that the tweet or the short statement is the container of truth, right? And maybe it is. But, I think, when you say, Exit West, Last White Man, these are titles and they have gestures embedded in them. But it's a little bit difficult, to take a title like that and to express what it is trying to do in a few sentences in a talk. That said, I'm going to try to do that a little bit. So, The Last White Man is a novel in which a young man named Anders wakes up one day and he's dark. And when he went to bed the night before, he thought of himself as white. And he doesn't like this. And he wants it to stop, and he wants to change back to what he was. And this problem for him doesn't stop, and it begins to spread. Now, why have I written a novel in where this happens, and what interested me in doing this, and what does it all mean? I mean, those all are sort of, I guess, long answers. But I think that we live in a world of increasing tribalization. In human history, there are epochs when a dominant empire begins to fade. This music is very appropriate. This, I don't know if you can hear this music in the background,
Yeah, it is.
but when a dominant empire begins to fade, and what then happens is you often see this sort of fragmentation and the rise of this sort of conflict and tribalization. Now, I think we live in a moment where, in a sense, a kind of American empires may or may not be the right word depending on your politics, but where a dominant American force that has shaped the world for the last 75 years is beginning to fade. And as a result, what's happening is you are seeing the freeing up of localized conflicts, identities, etc. We saw when the British Empire left this part of the world, we saw the rise of the conflict between Muslims and Hindus, and when the Ottoman Empire ended, we saw many of the conflicts of the Balkans. When the Soviet Union ended, we were given Azerbaijan, Armenia, we were given. And so in this world of tribalization, we are seeing in a way a retreat of people into essentialized identities. I am Pakistani, or I am Muslim, or I'm this kind of Muslim, or I'm this kind of Pakistani, or I'm white, or I'm this, I'm that. I think that this is very dangerous. Now, I think partly the reason why this is happening is because we are increasingly unable to articulate a vision of the future that is both desirable and inclusive. The future seems to have become frightening to us. Now, as a result of the future becoming frightening to us, technology is changing things very rapidly. We look ahead to the future. So many people here think, what will happen to our kids in Pakistan in the next 10, 20 years? Should we stay? Should we go? If we stay, what do we do? Can we even go? This fear of the future gives rise to a politics of nostalgia. People come up and say that going back to the way that things were, whether it was the caliphate, whether it was America in the 1950s, whether it was Britain before the EU, politicians all over the world are beginning to articulate these powerful nostalgic visions, which I think are misguided visions, because we can't go back to the past. And the past wasn't what we thought it was in the first place. And so the question then becomes, how, as a writer or an artist, do you respond to this thing? And what I wanted to do in this novel was two things. I wanted to respond, one, by trying to think about a future, a future where, in a sense, this racial conflict and even racial war begins to manifest. But yet somehow we proceed beyond that. We get to something else, to sort of repopulate the future imaginatively as something we may want to actually go to. And the other part of it is, just to finish this, the other part of it is that I wanted to try to break down some of these barriers. In a novel where all the characters are white, which is what The Last White Man is, there's no main characters, 4 main characters, all of them are white. Written by me, somebody who's brown, the question is, if I can write these characters, what does it mean? If you believe in these characters, and this brown person has written these white people, is this racial stuff real? Have we just imagined this into existence? Does it destabilize the whole idea of race? And I think, the last thing I'll say is that we're living now in a moment where it's increasingly the case that we are told that we need to write about people like us. So I should write 51-year-old, mostly bald, 5'9" Lahori men, right? But I really, I think, reject that position. And I reject that position because you have to think of what writing is. Writing can be a representational act. And for many people, it's powerful when it's a representational
Yes.
act. But writing can also be a transgressive act.
Right.
It can be the act of a man who wonders, what would it be like for me to be a woman? What would it be like for me to be young or old? What would it be like for me to live 100 years ago or 100 years in the future? And I think that aspect of fiction and creativity is very important. So in many ways, The Last White Man is an attempt to, I guess, destabilize the idea of race and to see whether it can really stand up if we begin to play with it.
Yes, Mohsin, there are so many thoughtful moments in this particular novel, and I think that's part of your maturity at a point, and that is what I was seeking for. But just my last question on your style in this particular novel. What I could see most of the time, long passages to be sentences. Like this last one where the novel ends, I could just, from linguistic viewpoint, pick on 31 lines paragraph, which is a whole sentence, with punctuations, of course. There are 300 words in this one sentence. There are 37 commas, one full stop, or a period. So, this style, it's very engaging, of course. Do you want to say something about this style? After all that you have written, your journey towards writing more and more, maybe better and better. Please.
So I think, it sort of goes without saying, but writing is built on words, and it's built on sentences, it's built on form. Now, the idea of this novel, in a way, was to suggest that people's identity is something that's somewhat fluid, that you can flow from one position to the next, that you can change your mind, that you can change who you are. 2 minutes left. Yeah. Now, how do you do that, right? So for me, what I guess I was trying to explore in this book, and the reasons why the sentences are written in this way, is that at the moment, so much of our writing, tweets, etc., is a kind of performative writing. Okay. We put a short sentence out into the world. We then feel that we must defend the position that we've articulated because we've taken a public position.
Right.
This locks us into positions. I might have tweeted something, I don't tweet, but I might have tweeted something, 4 years ago, and now somebody says, oh, why did you say this? The truth is, I don't believe this anymore. I don't know why I said that. It seems a ridiculous thing for me to have said. But I will defend it now because, this is my position. It's a kind of rigidity that comes from that. Now, what I was trying to do with these sentences is, what happens is that a thought occurs. But there isn't a full stop. We flow into the next thought, and the next thought, and the next thought. A certain rhythm is established. We begin to flow from one thing to the next to the next. You have an idea. You think, is that right? You let go of the idea. You touch the next idea. You pick it up. Sounds good, but maybe not. You qualify it. You're in this character set, and you're flowing from place to place to place. And so, in a sense, a novel that tries to destabilize the idea of whiteness or the idea of race is a novel where you have to figure out how are you going to destabilize for these characters and for the reader how they think about things. And sentences like this that flow without full stops, but through commas, that move from one place to the next, were for me a way to create that effect that allows us to change our minds, to hold something in our consciousness, to discard of it and move on to something else.
Thank you so much, Mohsin. And I must say, particularly this last one, to be very lyrical and very thoughtful. And there are so many engaging moments in all that. Do we have time for questions or not?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, I'm sorry.
I'm happy to take it, but I think the next people are up.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mohsin. It was
Thank
lovely
you.
talking to you. A pleasure.
Attention please everyone. The next session starts at 12:50. We'll have a break of 5 minutes.